Sunday and the rising. The rising, there's so much that happens before a rising. You know, this week coming up to Easter is known in Christianity as the Passion of Christ. And in latter days, these days, we think of passion as something different. We think of it as something as love, and that we have a passion for someone. Maybe it's also defined or implied with lust, or with I have a passion, a mission in life, something I am called to do, whereas passion originally meant struggle. And Christ does struggle in those days coming to the rising, and we all struggle before arising. So we talked about Jesus being in the wilderness those 40 days during what we celebrate as Lent, what we observe as Lent. And then he comes out and things get kicked into motion. Everything is happening. The powers that be during that time are getting rallied up by people because they want something to happen. People are upset about what Jesus is calling for. He's calling for a new kingdom, a kingdom of the Jews. And people don't know what he's talking about. He's making people very, very nervous. He's been making people all nervous already. And so now things are coming to a fever pitch. So people are all over the place, wondering, they're calling for him to be silent. Something has to be done. This isn't good. People don't want it to happen. And don't we get the same way when we feel something happening in our lives and we feel like we're on some kind of journey? We feel like there's something coming for us. And we may not always see a rising on the horizon. We just know we feel chaos. And we stay in chaos. We're doubting everything. We're questioning everything. We may be angry. We may not be clear about anything at all. Our feelings may be all over the place. Our bodies don't feel good. That's the struggle. That's the passion happening within us. Things are stirring up on all levels: mind, body, spirit, and heart. We also call it in metaphysics and unity a new thought, chemicalization. Stuff's happening. Things are changing within you. And it is sometimes very, very uncomfortable. So that was going on within people, and that was in the cultural consciousness at that time. Everybody's vying for position. Pilate's wondering what to do. He keeps saying, I don't know what you people are talking about. I don't see what this man has done. And yet he's trying to cover his rear end because he's got people watching him. He doesn't want to lose his position. Everybody's jockeying for position. And that's what we do. All of those people in those stories are aspects within us when we start jockeying for position and trying to figure out what is going on during a chaotic period when we're getting ready for a rising. This period when we get to the crucifixion in Gethsemane, it's called the agony of Christ. And agony comes from a word that means contest. Jesus is suffering from a contest of wills. He's got the personality that's watching what's happening. In Gethsemane, he wants his friends to help him and watch out for him. Pray with me. I'm struggling here. And his friends are all falling asleep, dealing with their own stuff. And don't we often look for something outside of us to help us with a struggle? We look for something, and it might be a person. somebody that we want counsel from, somebody that we respect, maybe somebody we know well. Maybe it's a friend, a colleague. Maybe it's a minister. Maybe it's somebody, maybe you listen to something online. Maybe you need something outside of you because you want something to help you make sense of what's happening. And whenever there's a calling, there can be a resistance. That's what Jesus was feeling. He's having this resistance to things. The personality of him is saying, I don't want to do this. Take this cup from me. I don't want to do this. This is huge. And yet there's this other part of him that knows this is the fulfillment of the law. Part of him is saying, I don't want to. And the other part of him is saying, this is mine to do. And those two things are bumping up against each other. And that is the fight. When we are in our own contest of wills, trying to figure out, am I going to do it or am I not? Am I going to say yes or not? Am I going to play small or not? Am I going to step fully into my divinity or not? I'm going to do what Spirit's calling me to do or not? Am I going to stay in my patterns or not? Am I going to change my habits or not? Am I going to get up earlier and meditate every day or not? And when I hear Spirit speaking to me, am I going to listen or not? Am I going to heed or not? The contest of wills, fighting. And that's the agony. That's the suffering. And we get to end the suffering when we make a decision, when that executive faculty, the power of will, one of the 12 powers that is ours, kicks in and makes a decision one way or another. And as spiritual beings having a human experience, we can decide at that time, I'm going to do what I've always done because I'm comfortable there. And I know what that is. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. I don't have to figure anything out. And I can just stay here. And that's a valid decision. And we all get to make it. Or that executive within us feels the pull of the higher self, the divine self, that part of us that is always calling us forward, and says, yes, I know that for this I was born. For this I was born. I haven't done it before. I don't know what it feels like. I don't know what it's going to look like after I say yes. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know how it's going to affect my world. And I say yes. And Jesus said yes. At the end of that contest of wills. He knew, for this I am born. I am the way shower. I am called in this moment to give up my life and show others what it is like to die to the personality and stand fully in my divinity and to put in motion this thing that I am called to do. And to demonstrate for them what the kingdom is. and what the kingdom feels like in your bones, and what the expression of the kingdom feels like in actuality, what it looks like in actuality. And so he said yes. And the people called for his death. Pilate said, okay, that's what you want. I'll give you what you want, and I wash my hands of it. Not my fault, it's yours, because you all said you wanted it. And they crucify him. They lay him on the cross. An agonizing, long death. Agonizing, long death. And Jesus is in his divinity the whole time. He's not yelling for release. People were taunting him, spitting at him, yelling things at him. They ripped off part of his robes. They were gambling them away. He was tortured. The whole time, nothing but opposition, 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 opposition. Strong, strong, strong opposition. And at any time, he could have said, I don't have to do this. I am the Son of God. I could raise this part of the world, throw dust all on top of them all, and bring it all to a conclusion right here, right now, because I'm tired of these people doing what they're doing to me. And he did not. He said, yes, I'm stepping into this, the way to unfold the law as it's to unfold. And stood in his divinity that whole time, forgiving people what they're doing as they're doing it to him. That's how sure he was of that, so sure of his connection, his oneness with the Father. He didn't fight, he didn't argue, he didn't defend himself. He didn't help people figure out what they were asking him. Every time they asked a question, who are you? Oh, whatever you say I am. He didn't need people's affirmation. That's what it's like when you're in your divinity fully. You don't need anything outside of you to tell you who you are or what's next or how to do it, because you know it's all in here. And you're ready for a rising. You are in the rising. Jesus was in his rising that whole time. That whole time. Even in that, crucifixion is part of the rising. The rising could not have happened without the crucifixion, without his death. That whole time is the rising. So as we're struggling, as we are in our own chaotic periods, and as we are all struggling for something that we are being called to, we are all in the process of rising. But because it's dark and lonely and hard and confusing and ugly, and because there may be opposition and stuff coming at us, and people saying, don't you do that, you don't deserve it, you're not worthy, you can't do this, you've never done it before, what makes you think? Who the heck are you to think you are the light of the world? Who are you? And without fighting, without being defensive, without uttering a word, you can be in your divinity and be in that rising. Because the rising actually is the coming into consciousness of your divinity. That's the rising. It's not some huge event. In fact, I was watching a video, something I was contemplating to play today, but it talked about Jesus, the stone being rolled away, and Jesus coming out of the tomb as if all of a sudden there was choirs of angels singing and everything happening, and the earth was shaking and stuff, and lights are flickering, and it's looking like disco balls are all over the place. And it was quiet. And people were still confused when he came out of the tomb. People were like, what? Wait a minute. Uh-oh. No, you're not my Lord. Who the heck are you? And he went off to continue his work. He didn't make any grand announcement. He didn't say, ta-da, it's me, resurrection time. Told you 3 days I was going to do this thing. Ha, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, day 3, here I am. None of that. The women were coming to the tomb with spices to honor him fully, and he was not there. He was off doing his thing, off in the world. He didn't need acclamation, didn't need the affirmation, didn't need to make an announcement. The announcement is your divinity, your divine presence, the thing that you are. Power is quiet and confident. Your divinity is quiet and confident. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need bravado. It doesn't have arrogance or aggression. It simply is. And the interesting thing is, as we're going through these periods and then you realize, uh-oh, I'm in a rising. Sometimes you've already risen to whatever it is you were being called to, and suddenly you notice it. Happens to me all the time. I've been working for something, struggling for something, in the chaotic period. I'm working. All of a sudden, one day I'm sitting there and I go, oh my gosh, this thing is happening. It's happening. And then I have that moment with myself where I go, oh gosh. And I got goosebumps all over. And that's the rising. It's quiet. And then you go off and you just be that thing that you rose into. Again, doesn't need to be a brass band. In fact, if you're in need of affirmation or acclamation at that time, you probably didn't have a real rising. You should just be able to feel it as you. A recognition that you're home, your spiritual home within you, that sanctuary within you is now more fully you. And as we go through our human lives, we'll have more and more of these risings until more of us is encapsulated in that fullness of divinity. It's almost as if you have points of light all over your body. And then when it's time to you to fully rise, when it's time and your work is done here, maybe then the light is on, fully, head to toe, and you're just this radiant thing, this being, this ball of light, of energy that has touched people's lives. Rising is quiet, but there's always a period of work, of contest, of anguish, of struggle beforehand. And the struggle is in here, people. It's in here. And you get to end the struggle when you engage that executive faculty of yours and you say, yes. 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 Yes, this is it. Simply, quietly, yes. And you can feel that in your bones. And it's there living in you as if it always was, because it was indeed always there. You just called it into expression. It's always there. in potentiality. The fullness of your divine self is in here waiting for you to say yes. Just waiting. And we all have the power. We all have the power for whatever it is we're called to. It's sitting as a seed inside of you. Don't worry about the struggle. Jesus did it. He's the way shower. He's the great example. He said no matter what it is, he demonstrated that no matter what it is, we can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. That's what he said. If I can do it, you can do it. And this is how we do it, folks. This is how we do it. He demonstrated it. He lived it. He lived it for us so that we could watch that and say, okay, this is how you do it. Don't worry about the struggle. Struggles come, struggles go. And as you're in it, you can say, this too shall pass. And you can always claim that as you're in the struggle, as the contest is happening, you can say there's a rising happening now. There's a rising happening now. And even if you don't know what it is, you can claim it because that is one of your powers. You can claim it as a rising. And you may have lots of people, just like Jesus did, saying, oh no. And even when you get to the rising, there were still people saying, don't tell anybody. He's out. Let's go find him. Let's go find him. And one of the scriptures even says that Pilate said, oh, I'll get him again. We just don't want people to know that this happened. They had fake news back then. You think it started now. In the last, how many years we've been talking about fake news. It was back then because they didn't want people to know that this happened. They were reporting back. He's not in the tomb. People went crazy. Find him. And if you can't find him, this is what we're going to tell people happened. That somebody stole his body. Tell people his body was stolen. Because if they believe that, we're not going to be able to control what happens next. Because people are going to know he was the real deal, and we can't let that happen. That's how afraid they were of that. We can't let that happen. How many of you have heard that from someone else? That they didn't want you to get where you were trying to go. That they didn't want you to have a rising. Or they didn't think you should or would or could. How many of you are the detractors of your own rising? Where you say to yourself, I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I can do this. Some of you are your own mob. There's another minister friend of mine who called it his opposition committee. And he first said it, I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, oh no, I'm just talking about the voices in my head. My opposition committee. His detractors. I always make up my own. I don't have anybody in my life anymore that's a detractor. All my friends love me and lift me up. I'm the only one saying, maybe you can't do this. You've never done that before. It's my personality I need to work on. It's my own voices that I need to work on. It's my own personal mob that I need to silence and kick to the curb. Be in the rising. There's always you can have a rising 50 times a day if you want one. Because the opportunities come up, don't they? And our challenge is not to judge the risings as big or small. They all matter. They all matter. And I invite you to celebrate every last one and to say thank you for it. Say thank you for the struggle, for the contest, for the lessons learned, for the rise in consciousness that you just engaged in. And it is moving you forth in life to bless yourself and those that you love and those that you come into contact with from that point on. Give thanks for all of it. And as you rise, the world rises. The global consciousness expands in goodness and light. And you are a part of changing the world just like Jesus was. Even a small ripple is a ripple. Even the smallest wave is still a wave. Even the smallest wave has everything within it that is in the sea, that is in the ocean, that is God. The rising. There's a process. There are things that we go through, and it's all good. It's all good, my friends. So keep saying yes in the midst of the struggle. Yeah, it's hard, and here I go. Yeah, it hurts, and there I go. Yes, somebody said I can't do it, and here I go. No, I've never done this before, and here I go. No, I don't know what's going to happen on the other side, but here I go. No, I don't know who I'm going to be in that new state of enlightenment, of empowerment, of growth, but here I go. Yes, 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 yes. Because as we read, that you will have life and have it abundantly as you rise, because of the rising. What's on the end of the rising, what's at the rising is abundance, love, peace, joy, harmony, unity, vitality. There's no way that you can have a change in consciousness and not have a change in your physical vitality. It'll change your life on every single level. So our work is to keep saying yes. Keep saying yes. And when the road gets tough, say there's a rising coming. There's a rising coming. There's always a rising coming. So this day is not just about Jesus, because it was never just about Jesus. He said that all the time, every time people threw accolades at him or gave him praise for something or thanked him for something, he always told them their part in what happened. And he always said, it wasn't my work. It's your work, you and the Father. Because just like I and the Father are one, so are you. You made this happen. Your faith made it happen. He said, I'm just the way shower. So I invite you, don't let it all be about Jesus. So as you're driving around and you see all the signs that say he is risen, you get to say, so have I. So have I. So have I. And you can say that every single day of your life. Every day of your life. That is my prayer for you, that you will call in arising every single day of your life. Let's take this into meditation. So just relax in this. Relax in the invitation to arising. I want you to think about that word that chose you for this year. Think of it again. We're now in the second quarter of this journey with that word, that power. What does that look like in full blossom? Like the petals of a bud opening up. One petal at a time, stretching towards the sun. That can be the picturing of your blossoming into your divinity, into this word that has called you forth. And as the choir so beautifully sang, if you ask for increase within this power, ask Spirit, what does that look like? Look at yourself with divine eyes now. Beyond all past experiences. Beyond all previous patterns, habits, previous judgments of yourself and your abilities. If all of that was blown out of the water, what's possible? What's possible? What's possible now? Maybe that's a question you ask Jesus, if that speaks to your heart, if that's a way that helps you rise. Ask Jesus, your brother, your way shower, what could this look like? Maybe you picture yourself looking in the mirror, but looking at yourself with the eyes. And you ask that God self, what does this look like? Take my hand and lead me to the rising. What's next? In the expansion of our consciousness around our divinity. What's next? as you get answers, as something is made known, continue to say, yes, I'm ready for a rising. I am ready for a rising. Right here, right now, because for this I was born. For this I was born. Not a different me, an expansive, fuller, deeper me. A happier, more joyous, more peaceful me. A relaxed, brilliantly shining me. I say yes. I say yes. Yes is upon my lips and in my heart. Yes is upon my lips and in my heart, always after the call of Spirit. Yes, yes, yes. Simply and boldly, yes. And in this moment, I rise. In this moment, I rise. In this moment, I rise. And so it is, and so it shall be.